It's 3 a.m. on a Monday morning. It must be time for Monday Meanderings. So here I am, Michael Romeo, talking about books. Last week, I talked about getting more involved in the local literary scene, local being, for me, pretty much the state of North Carolina, even though there is quite a strong literary scene here in the western region. But I decided that this week I was going to talk about 6 authors from North Carolina that I have actually read and enjoyed. And kind of a reminder to me that I always seem to think that the talent, the greatness, the ones that are making something happen are out there somewhere. I mean, out there somewhere. Some of them are out there somewhere, if you know what I mean. When in fact, some of them have been right here at home. And so let's talk about the ones that I have encountered in the past. As kind of a reminder moving forward that there's a lot of talent for me to explore here in North Carolina, in the local literary scene. First off, one author I've read that I loved was Lee Smith. And why I haven't read more of her books is just a shame on me. I don't know why. I've read 2 of her books, actually. I've read Family Linen, which is a really fun read. It is about a dysfunctional family and family secrets and family arguments and family murder, maybe. Anyway, it's a really good book, and she really captures the quirkiness of the family unit as they deal with a lot of the issues that they do deal with. One of which is a murder, and who did the murder, and who was murdered, and where the body is. It's an entertaining read on any scale. And another one I read by her is Oral History, which is a fascinating book about a university student who returns home to her very small hometown in the Appalachians to do I forget if it's a dissertation for a doctorate or if it's just a final project for an earlier college year. But she returns home to talk about the family's oral history and the stories that get passed down. And she learns a lot about the family and a lot about the power of unity, the power of oral history, basically. And the story that gets told is absolutely delightful. And delightful probably makes it sound a little lighter than it really is. But it's another very strong novel from Lee Smith. And it's one I couldn't put down. And then there's T.R. Pearson, who is a delight to read. And again, I've only read 2 of his books, and he's written so much more. And I just found out in researching for this video that he also writes under the name Rick Gavin and writes crime fiction under that name. So I need to look into that because I love crime fiction. And I've never heard of Rick Gavin, but I'm going to now. And I'm going to start seeing what else T.R. Pearson writes. To give you an example of why I love T.R. Pearson, I have here on my Kindle. I'm going to read you from his book, Off for the Sweet Hereafter. Okay? And I'm going to read you the first sentence of the book. That's all. Just the first sentence. Keep that in mind as I'm reading, that this is just the first sentence. That was the summer we lost the ball to Jeter, who was not even mostly Jeter anymore, but was probably mostly Throckmorton, or anyway was probably considered mostly Throckmorton, which was an appreciable step up from being considered mostly Jeter, since Jeter's hadn't even been anything much, while Throckmorton's had in fact been something once previously, before the money got gone, and the prestige fell away, leaving merely the bluster and the taint and the general Throckmorton aroma, all of which taken together hardly made for a legacy worth getting stirred up over, but any one of which taken singly still outstripped the entire bulk of advancements ever attempted and realized by Jeters, who had scratched around in the dirt but were not much accomplished at farming, and who had speculated in herds of cattle but were not much accomplished at speculating either, and who had at last had turned their energies to the construction of a hen house, which commenced ramshackle and got worse, but became nonetheless the chief Jeter advancement, along with the hens and the little speckled brown eggs and the localized ammonia cloud, which was itself most probably the primary Jeter success, though no particular Jeter or group of Jeters together actually contributed to it or could prevent it either. Or so when the bald Jeter, with the fat Jeter as her maid of honor, exchanged vows with Braxton Porter Throckmorton III in the sanctuary of the Methodist Church on Saturday, June the 12th, 1942, and afterwards set up house in Neely proper, she got away from the hens and the hen house and out from under the ammonia cloud, which was most likely beginning to expand in June of 1942, since it set into expanding most every June and swelled straight through August and on into September, especially this past August, and especially this past September, when it was bearing down on the town limits and posing some threat to the ice house, which was regular and ordinary for the season, particularly in August and particularly in September. So we were having what had come to be our usual summer straight up to the moment Mr. Darewood Bredger laid his ladder against the Throckmorton clapboard and climbed to the upper story, where he pressed his nose to the bedroom window screen and shaded his eyes and called and hollered and shrieked at the bald Jeter until he was satisfied that she was gone from us for good. First sentence. I know people who talk that way here in the Appalachian Mountains. And when I read that, it was so real to me and so believable that I knew I was just going to love T.R. Pearson's writing. I've read this book. I've also read the one that comes before it called A Short History of a Small Place, which I talked about in one of my first videos on YouTube about quirky books with quirky characters. And T.R. Pearson is just, he'll have you laughing out loud. Actually, I'm wrong. I've read more than 2 books. I read 3 books. I also read Cry Me a River, which I totally forgot about till just now. Actually listened to that one on audiobook, and it was brilliantly read and had me holding my sides. It was so funny. And then another author from just north of where I live, she lives in Madison County, is Sheila K Adams, a folk teller who she's a folk teller by career, and is brilliant at what she does. And when she took to writing a novel called My Old True Love, which I've also talked about in other videos, she just created a beautiful book about a family in the Appalachian Mountains in Madison County, North Carolina. And it's right at the start of the Civil War. And the family basically is not a whole lot aware of what's going on with the Civil War because they live in a small holler in the back mountains of Madison County, but it does touch them eventually. And it's also a story about, similar to Oral History by Lee Smith, story about the telling of tales through ballads, and how that's how you taught your kids back then the rights and the wrongs and the what you should do's and what you shouldn't do's was through ballads and teaching them to sing these ballads. And the life of this one family becomes a ballad when one of their own goes off to war, and more happens, and it becomes somewhat tragic, the tale that follows. Next up is a writer called Jamie Mason. I've only read one of her books. At the time, it was the only book she had out, but researching for this video, I discovered she's written several more, and I am going to read them. The one I read was called 3 Graves Full, and it's about a man who kills another man who is annoying the crap out of him, and buries the body in his back garden. Later on, there is, I forget why this happens, but there is an excavation of the man's yard. Again, I wish I could remember why it was being excavated. But 2 more bodies get dug up, and neither one is the one that he buried in his yard, but there's 2 more buried in his yard. And the mystery that then surrounds who are these other 2 bodies, and what is he going to do to keep them from discovering the third, which is the one that he killed. Dark humor, very well done dark humor. And it's a well-paced mystery. It's twisted, and it is a very worthwhile read. And I'm certain that her other books are going to be just as good, because I actually had the chance to meet Jamie Mason. A friend of mine and I went to see her talk and do a book signing, and I was very taken with her simply because about 5 of us showed up, and it was in this cafe that I'm not even sure still exists anymore, coffee house type place. And rather than keep it formal and have her stay up there at the microphone talking to the 5 people about her book and her writing, she just said, the heck with this, and she pulled us all together around a table where we then bought our refreshments, our coffee, our soft drinks, or whatever we were having, and she just let us do a Q&A, asking her questions about her writing, about writing in general too, and about her book. And she answered just very like she was our best friend, and this was just a normal routine. We got together and having a blast. I was very impressed with her for the way she handled that situation, and just how approachable she was when it came down to the talking about writing, and with these strangers, basically. Another writer from the South, actually born in Asheville, North Carolina, which is right next to where I live. It's the big city from where I live. It's Charles Frazier, the author of Cold Mountain, the only book I've read by him. And I loved it. 5-starred it, even though the end pissed me off. I won't tell you how it ends because that would be a spoiler, but the end really did piss me off but I still gave it 5 stars because the writing was just absolutely phenomenal. And he's gone on and written several more books himself, which I need to add to my list. From what I've read about them, if you like his first one, Cold Mountain, there's no way you're not going to like the other ones because they're just as good. Cold Mountain is about a deserter from the Confederate Army in the Civil War making his way home to his true love and the hardships he endures to make this trek, and also the hardships that she's enduring trying to run the homestead without her man there. And it's a beautiful novel, a love story for the ages. And I absolutely loved it. Absolutely loved it. It's on my list of favorite books. So when I do my list of 120 books in episodes that some of you know I'm doing, it's going to be in there somewhere. I'm not sure exactly where in the list it'll hit, but Cold Mountain's there. And then finally, I just feel like I need to mention this author because he is such a presence in the literary market, and that's Nicholas Sparks. Now, the first book I ever read by Nicholas Sparks was True Believer, and I liked it. I really enjoyed it, about a New York reporter who comes to North Carolina, the coastal area of North Carolina, to research the legend of a ghost story, of a haunting. And he ends up falling in love with a local woman, and which is the romantic part. And he writes romances all the time. And it was a good story. I enjoyed it, and I enjoyed the ghost story aspect of it. And the romantic part was well done. Unfortunately, the half dozen or so books I tried after that by Nicholas Sparks, none of them touched me at all. They left me really cold, and I just didn't like them. But that doesn't mean the man is not absolutely phenomenally rich and famous from his writing. He is a philanthropist because of his writing. And he's a North Carolina resident, and I think he's just worth mentioning because he is so impactful on the North Carolina literary scene. So there's some 6 authors there: Lee Smith, T.R. Pearson, Sheila K Adams, Jamie Mason, Charles Frazier, and Nicholas Sparks. And I'm looking forward to who else I'm going to discover. I'm going to follow up more on these authors. Like I said, I've only read a couple of books by each one, and they've written more, except for Sheila K Adams. As far as I know, that's the only book she ever wrote. I may be wrong about that, but that's what I've been able to find out. But the others have all written more books, and I need to read them. And who else is out there? I mean, there's a list. When you look at the list on the University of North Carolina website of North Carolina writers, the list is huge, absolutely huge. And I know for a fact that right here in Western North Carolina, around the Asheville region, I know there are a lot of writers here. And I'm talking published writers, not just people who play at it and have dreams of being a writer, but people who have actually been published and whose books are out there to be read. And I'm looking forward to this adventure in 2023 of learning more about the local literary scene. And these are just some people that have paved the way for me without my knowing it. And I guess that's it for this meandering, because now it's just further down the road. So we'll talk at you later. It's been great chatting with you. I always enjoy it. And we'll see you all again soon. Bye.